Hello and welcome to today's lecture. The topic for today's lecture is gainful employment, the me-we balance. The objectives for today's lecture are understanding the concept of gainful employment, understanding the components of gainful employment, understanding the theoretical approach and applications of gainful employment, understanding the new emphasis on gainful employment in India, understanding the concept of the me-we balance, and understanding the concept of individualism and collectivism. The term gainful employment is generally used to strike an equitable balance between the input of the worker and his employer, where then the worker does a day's work for a day's pay to create a win-win situation. So let's say you're a skilled carpenter and you manufacture 10 chairs for your boss. You really enjoy exercising your crafts, feel that you are well compensated for your endeavors, and at the end of the day, your employers are satisfied with your handiwork. Not only is the employer satisfied with your work, but he extends your work contract for a year. Gainful employment usually, but not always, means being provided an adequate salary for a certain amount of work done. It's often used in the context of working for a concern which has many employees accomplishing similar or dissimilar tasks at equal or varying wages. Gainful can have other meanings too. An apprentice may work at a very low salary, often just room and board. The employment is gainful because the apprentice is gaining the experience and discipline relating to becoming a journeyman. He is learning the attitudes and behavior of a journeyman, and in 5 years or so will graduate to become a journeyman who is paid the same wage as other journeymen. Gainful employment can also be related to internship. An intern works in a lawyer's office for 3 years, which, if he passes, will allow him to plead cases and negotiate with prosecutors for various sentences for crimes. The gain in the intern's case is an extremely prosperous career for which he must wait 3 years to enjoy. His gain is training by a professional, recommended reading of law and case law and appellate law, and actual preparation of complaints, pleas, real estate titles, wills and trusts, among other documents. For the intern, he is performing real work and learning through process, rather than paying for and sitting in a law school where he would learn about instead of how to. Further, gainful employment, or to be gainfully employed, is having a reliable, full-time, steady job for which you are paid enough to support yourself without it being a struggle, or where you are kind of backsliding despite working. It also connotes a job which you find satisfying, rewarding, meaningful, and which affords you both self-respect and the respect of others who are meaningful to you. This may be a more archaic use, but once upon a time, anyone who did an honest day's work for an honest day's pay was respected, whether they were a janitor, a railroad engineer, a farmer, or a doctor. All work was recognized as being essential to the society, so there wasn't the snobbery or hierarchy that there is today. Gainful employment is a quaint term that has fallen out of favor in this 21st century global landscape. It used to be that people would seek to gain a job that would provide a stable work environment where the commitment by both employer and employee was considered permanent. For people born in the first half of last century, a job was a career. You hoped that once you were hired, that's where you would stay. People were not required to be as mobile as today. Most companies had medical plans and, at that time, were required by law to have a company-funded retirement plan. It was not until the late 70s and early 80s that all this began to change. Nowadays, the term has fallen out of use, probably due in part to the decrease in job stability, both employers avoiding full-time hires or long-term commitments at mid to lower level jobs, and people being more mobile, more restless, so changing jobs more often. But for those who use it, it connotes a sense of stability, pride, and the ability to save a little bit and have a cushion for emergencies, having a baby, or for a vacation, etc. In psychology, gainful employment is a positive psychology concept that explores the benefits of work and employment. Positive psychology's emphasis on gainful employment has increased the amount of recent publications on gainful employment and its impact on the quality of life and illnesses like depression. Present measurements of employment emphasize decreasing the unemployment as opposed to increasing gainful employment. Positive psychology argues that gainful employment is a necessary component of living a fulfilled life, noting its positive impact on identity, social support, purpose, and challenge. Let me first talk about the components of gainful employment. Gainful employment is characterized by the following 9 components. The first is variety in duties that are performed. A lack in variability can lead to presenteeism, in which the employee physically goes to work but becomes unproductive or discontented due to boredom with repetitive work activities. If the tasks at work are varied, satisfaction comes more easily. The second is safe working environment. Safe working conditions must be ensured by the organization and its managers. Third component of gainful employment is income for family and oneself. Income is necessary to support oneself. However, data does not show that people who earn more money are more gainfully employed than those who earn less. Fourth is a purpose derived from providing a product or service. An individual may derive purpose in life from the work that he or she completes. Many individuals describe their work as a calling, or in other words, a vocation to which the employee brings a passion, a commitment to the work for its own sake. Fifth is happiness and satisfaction. Enthusiasm and attitude at work. There must be a close match between an individual's activities and his or her knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Sixth is positive engagement and involvement. An individual must have a sufficient amount of work to complete, have the necessary knowledge and resources to complete that work, and have the opportunity to perform and grow as a result of the work. It has been reported that the most gainfully employed individuals work in settings where the skills of the employee match the skills required for the assigned tasks. Seventh is a sense of performing well and meeting goals. An individual must believe that he or she is capable of performing well at work and exceeding the goals that he or she set. In order to perform well at work, employees should strive to set SMART goals. By SMART, we mean specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and timely goals. Now, the eighth is friendship. Positive companionship has been proven to lead to fewer accidents, more engaged customers, increased achievement, increased job satisfaction, and increased productivity. The ninth and the last component of gainful employment is an environment that appreciates and respects diversity. Racial and ethnic diversity are increasing rapidly in today's workplace. In order to increase diversity, managers may utilize diversity management, in which they use a variety of management techniques in order to augment the positive outcomes that are linked with diversity in the workplace. Now we shall discuss the major theoretical approaches and applications of gainful employment. Emphasis on the relationship between work and fulfillment can be traced back to Sigmund Freud, who noted that a healthy life is one in which people have the ability to love and work. Research confirms that when individuals are gainfully employed, as characterized by a safe environment, purpose derived from work, engagement, etc., their quality of and satisfaction with life increases. Gainful employment is most often approached from a psychological standpoint with business, real-world, and clinical applications. Specifically, the strengths-based practice is a psychological approach to gainful employment that has business applications for the employed and people in management positions. In management in particular, the managers who focus on employees' strengths, communicate company goals, and give constructive feedback to employees promote gainful employment. One example of this is the Clifton Strengths Finder from the book Now Discover Your Strengths, which employs positive psychology principles to build on the strengths that employees already have, as opposed to changing their weaknesses and deficiencies. According to a study done by Clifton and Harter, the strengths-based approach to gainful employment results in three major steps. Step 1 is the identification of talents. Step 2 is the integration of talents into employees' image and workplace. And step 3 is the tactical behavioral change in which the employee begins to view his or her success as a result of his or her unique talents. Career counseling represents another psychological approach to gainful employment with business and real-world applications for individuals seeking employment. Vocational counselors work with individuals who are considering new careers not only to secure employment for them, but also to ensure organizational fit and job satisfaction. For example, a vocational counselor may ask their client to complete an assets exercise in which the client writes down his or her assets and debits on a sheet of paper with two columns, one for assets and another for debits. This exercise allows the client to consider his or her strengths, interests, and talents, and helps the counselor determine what types of professions will be most beneficial for the client. Gainful employment, when approached from a psychological perspective, has been shown to have relevant clinical and real-world applications. Individuals with traumatic brain injuries demonstrate greater psychological well-being and perceived quality of life if they are gainfully employed. In a study assessing perceived quality of life in individuals with traumatic brain injury, findings indicated that the level of engagement in work activities was significantly related to perceived quality of life, suggesting that gainful employment leads to more favorable appraisals of quality of life. Similar findings argue that gainful employment may function to provide a buffer against depression and anxiety in individuals with traumatic brain injury. Gainful employment is also a contributing factor in the social perception of an individual by others. Gainful employment significantly reduces the social stigma shown by adults towards a fictional person coping with schizophrenia. These findings suggest that gainful employment has internal clinical benefits for the individual as well as external and real-world benefits on how others perceive individuals. Let's now discuss the new emphasis on gainful employment in India. India has delivered strong economic growth relative to many other countries in past few years, but there are concerns about whether the growth has been inclusive or whether the country is heading for jobless growth. Data from India's Labour Bureau on employment creation suggests that fewer than 2 million jobs are being created annually, a seemingly dire situation in a country where the working age population grows by some 16 million every year. In reality, much of the discussion around jobless growth is not founded on robust data or analysis. Indeed, there is a dearth of reliable and timely data on this topic. More fundamentally, we believe the debate around the pace of job creation is a narrow one that does not reflect the labor market goals India should set for itself. India has a holistic goal, that of creating opportunities for gainful employment for the workforce, but gainful employment is about quality and not just quantity. It implies not only creation of jobs, but the creation of more fulfilling and better paying jobs that are more productive and that mean an enhancement in work quality, a term that we use to describe other aspects of work desired by the labor force such as safety, cleanliness, flexibility, income security, skills, and intellectual stimulation, etc. These aspects of work are important objectives of an economy that seeks to deliver inclusive growth and meet the aspirations and expectations of its workforce of 460 million. Discussion on gainful employment has been divided into 3 sections. The first reviews trends in labor market data over the last 4 years and the extent to which existing measurement tools capture or fail to capture the essential elements of gainful employment. The second section focuses on global trends such as automation and the rise of independent work that have been affecting India in a more intense way in the recent past and that have important implications for efforts to stimulate gainful employment. The third and final section outlines some measures that policymakers and businesses could consider as ways to enable and enhance both measurement and creation of more gainful employment. Gainful employment as an issue is by no means limited to India. The International Labour Organization, ILO, launched a campaign focusing on decent work in 1999. Quality of work was a theme institutionalized as part of the European Union's Lisbon Treaty in 2000, which included the goal of sustainable economic growth with more and better jobs. Yet, gainful employment remains an elusive object in many parts of the world. Research by the McKinsey Global Institute has shown that beyond the unemployment rate, questions relating to quality of work such as skill levels, productivity, and income advancement can be potent and sometimes politically corrosive ones in advanced economies at a time when labor market dynamics are shifting. Moreover, the trends such as the push to fill the infrastructure deficit, the advent of automation, and the growing importance of digital ecosystems and independent work are challenging labor markets around the world while also creating new and better opportunities. India's labor markets are experiencing structural change, but there is a dearth of reliable data to capture these shifts. the debate tends to focus narrowly on pace of job creation, which itself could be measured more frequently and accurately. We see the need for a new emphasis on the notion of gainful employment for India's workforce of 460 million that focuses on improved quality of work and the income derived from it. Gainful employment covers a range of issues, including the quantity and type of work done by people already in employment, growth in labor productivity, higher earnings, and aspects of work quality such as safety, cleanliness, flexibility, income security, and intellectual challenge. Surveys showing a 3 percentage point decline in India's overall labor force participation between 2011 and 2015 should not take the focus away from the structural shift from agriculture towards the non-farm sector, particularly construction, trade, and transport. During this period, agriculture shrank by 26 million jobs, while non-farm jobs rose by 33 million, largely driven by rapid economic growth between 2013 and 2015. More recent trends in aggregate employment cannot be derived from the quarterly enterprise studies available, highlighting the data deficit. Labor force participation and the number of employed people do not in themselves measure gainful employment. Declining labor participation may indicate that more young people have stayed in education and/or that more women from households which were once in extreme poverty but have now entered the middle class no longer need to work in low productivity jobs. Likewise, supplementary income opportunities such as additional days for work on a construction project or selling home produce through a digital platform may not increase the number of jobs, but they may raise the income level, choice, flexibility, and security of an underemployed worker engaged in low productivity work. Global trends affecting economies around the world pose challenges to labor but also lead to more opportunities in gainful employment. 3 of these trends are particularly relevant to India. To bridge India's infrastructural gaps, the government has raised public investment in roads, railways, rural development, power, telecom, housing, and soft areas of healthcare and education, creating work opportunities for an estimated 7 million workers at wages that are 70% higher than for average farm workers. In addition to creating jobs, there is some evidence of investment in power and road infrastructure, triggering growth in non-farm economy in key states. Rapid advances in automation technologies are affecting India's information technology and business process outsourcing sectors. These sectors have remained net job creators, and the industry estimates that companies could hire up to 2.5 to 3 million more workers by 2025, providing they can acquire the skills that meet the changing needs. The global rise of independent work and micro-entrepreneurship aided by new digital ecosystems is mirrored in India, where they are providing new work opportunities with better pay and links to organized value chains, including parts of the country less covered by formal labor markets. Our initial estimates are that the rapidly growing sectors of the cab-hailing platforms, e-commerce, digital financial services through networks of banking correspondents and lending of micro-entrepreneurship and self-help groups have improved income opportunities for 18 to 22 million workers in about the past 3 years. India needs to collect more frequent, timely, and relevant labor market data to understand trends in gainful employment. Government should help stimulate the creation of gainful employment through targeted programs and by further removing hurdles that block private investment and innovation. Business and policymakers can work together in areas such as boosting growth in the labor-intensive tourism sector, unlocking the digital economy's potential to create work opportunities, and reskilling of the workforce. Now let's talk about another aspect of gainful employment, that is the me-we balance. The me-we approach is better understood through the concepts of individualism and collectivism. First, let's discuss individualism. Individualism is a perspective in which the needs of the individual are placed above the needs of the group. The core emphases are independence, uniqueness, and the individual as the fundamental unit of analysis. Individualism is the idea that the individual's life belongs to him and that he has an inalienable right to live it as he sees fit, to act on his own judgment, to keep and use the product of his effort, and to pursue the values of his choosing. It is the idea that individual is sovereign, an end in himself, and the fundamental unit of moral concern. This is the ideal that the American founders set forth and sought to establish when they drafted the Declaration and the Constitution and created a country in which the individual's rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness were to be recognized and protected. Let's now go to collectivism. A perspective in which the needs of the group are placed above the needs of the individual is called collectivism. The core emphases of collectivism are dependence, conformity, the desire to fit in, and the group as the fundamental unit of analysis. Collectivism is the idea that individual's life belongs not to him but to the group or society of which he is merely a part, that he has no rights, and that he must sacrifice his values and goals for the group's greater good. According to collectivism, the group or society is the basic unit of moral concern, and individual is of value only insofar as he or she serves the group. As one advocate of this idea puts it, man has no rights except those which the society permits him to enjoy. From the day of his birth until the day of his death, society allows him to enjoy certain so-called rights and deprives him of others, not because society desires especially to favor or oppress the individual, but because its own preservation, welfare, and happiness are the prime considerations. Now let me make it clear that humans often put the us ahead of the me in their daily lives, despite the economic irrationality of the choice, and their groups and organizations benefit from that choice. For example, studies have shown that members of organizations, if they report themselves satisfied with their position, will see the group's interest as their own, even if objective measures would show a conflict. And political scientists have found that research subjects' calculations about their interests in politics are collective and not individual. Women who have done well in their careers will respond to politicians who want to reduce gender discrimination. Many managers compare their work to herding cats, but human beings are put together very differently from loner animals. In fact, we are far more prone to cooperate than our close relatives, the chimpanzees, are. These apes share more than 98% of their genetic code with human beings, yet they couldn't calmly share an elevator with strangers or choose sides with unknown fellow apes for a friendly game. In fact, some psychologists and biologists have speculated that the human species has crossed the line and joined the ranks of extrasocial species whose members are so devoted that a large group of individuals can be viewed as if it were a single superorganism, like a beehive or an anthill. In view of Céline Casbier, a psychologist at University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, our minds are shaped to make us cooperative members of a hive. Identification with a group is the switch that activates these mechanisms, she wrote in a recent paper. Any group will do if it provides the psychological pathway from the me to we, religion, nation, race, ideology, sports team, military unit, and, of course, a corporation or work team. Each of us, she argues, is an individualist ape much of the time, but capable of becoming a loyal drone under the right circumstances. Once we sense that we're part of a hive, we have psychological mechanisms that make it easy for us to get in line and do our part, while our chimp cousins would keep insisting with bites and kicks and screams on getting their own way. One of these mechanisms is quick and untroubled communication. The sense that among us it's easy to comprehend what others mean, that here we all understand each other. It's that absence of self-consciousness, the ease and fellowship and sense of common values which make for intimacy and sanity, and the quick give and take of familiar intercourse, as Virginia Woolf once put it. Communication is more than nouns and verbs. A shared culture of references, folk tales, proverbs, and the like also marks the group members as belonging together, as do music, dancing, marching, synchronized sounds, and movement helping to communicate that we are one. Our communication channels allow us to share goals and plans, to understand that a desired outcome, for example, to win this election, to get this company back on top, to move this stuff out of the garage, is shared, and to be able to do the complex mental work of taking one's place in a mosaic of different workers doing different things. As Casbier points out, even the biology of human eye makes it easier for us to work together. The visible white surrounding our iris is unusual. Our primate relatives have dark eyes that don't pop against the surrounding skin tones, and it encourages sharing ideas in the most literal sense. If a group member shifts her gaze to look at something, others notice it and are likely to look at the same place. Another trigger of the we feeling is the sense of tradition, taboo, or authority. It may be embodied in a leader or sacred figure, but it need not be. Often, this sense arises in an unconscious but powerful consensus based on a shared history and shared rules. This is important to note because deference to group authority is not necessarily the same as deference to a single person. In fact, a feeling of we is easier to stir when team members believe that all are being treated the same, and the sense of we're all in it together is often enough to transform straying cats into eager bees. As anyone with kids knows, people the world over have natural fascination with fairness and easily resent a sense that any individual has special privileges or advantages. This is part of the mentality of groups, Casbier says, because a sense that all members are treated the same evokes that feeling of shared destiny, that the fate of one is the fate of all. This intense interest in fairness makes group members eager to punish anyone they perceive to be cheating. Self-centered as we often are, when we see a conflict between our interests and those of a group, which we belong to, we tend to prefer the interests of the group. In fact, most recent studies suggest that working in teams makes participants want to be even more unselfish. According to the theory of competitive altruism, people often find themselves in settings where they strive to outdo one another in their unselfishness in order to gain a valuable reputation for generosity. In one study of informal work groups in a village on the Caribbean island of Dominica, the men with reputations of generosity attracted the most helpers and got the most hours from others. With that, we conclude our today's lecture. I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching.